there are really only two ways to start a charter school in Colorado. You either have to be authorized by your local school board and your school district, or you have to be authorized by the State Charter School Institute. And before you can be authorized by the state board, the State Charter School Institute board, the school district has to decide that that's okay. They have to They have to release you to go apply for it.
All right, let me see if I got this. For instance, there was a terrific classical academy that was trying to be brought up in Boulder Valley School District. And they said no, even though Golden View Classical Academy is great and the same people were trying to do it up in Boulder. And the Boulder Valley said, no, you can't do that. Are you then able to go to the state chartering authority automatically, or you have to go to the people who just rejected you and say, please, may I go to the people who can reverse this decision?
That's exactly how it works.
That's insane.
Yeah. So that concept is called exclusive chartering authority, and it means that the only people in a school district that get to decide if a charter school exists are the school district folks themselves, the elected school board.
What's the state of educational choice in Colorado and around the nation? We're going to find out. But first, subscribe and like our channel. Click that little bell icon for notifications and find the Devil's Advocate podcast on your favorite listening app. Remember, if you want to learn something, you go to someone who's wise. Who's wise? Anyone who's bald. Ross Izard, who has been involved in education for, I don't know, a million years. Tell me, what's the state of educational choice in Colorado?
It's okay, I would say. It's
Thank you, and join us next week.
That's it. We can just cut it off there. It's good in some ways and not so good in other ways, right? So we're coming up on School Choice Week here, which is when we remember and celebrate all the different types of educational choice that we have in Colorado. But it's also a reminder for me, having worked in choice in Colorado for as long as I have, that we still got a lot to do. So, I mean, we're living in a state where we have huge amounts of public school choice all over the board. We've got 260 some odd public charter schools, 15% of the kids in the state in public charter schools. We've got homeschool enrichment programs, magnet schools, innovation schools, all types of stuff within the public system that's doing awesome work for hundreds of thousands of kids all over the state. But what we don't have is what we're seeing more and more states adopt across the country, which is some type of expanded school choice that also includes the full ecosystem, which would include private schools. Not for lack of trying. Colorado's been trying to do this for at least 25 years, going all the way back to 2000. It's still a topic of conversation, both at the federal level now with the new federal tax credit scholarship program and at the state level, but we haven't gotten there. So we've got this sort of wide swath of public school choice, which is constantly and chronically under attack in various ways, and we can talk about that. And then we've got this sort of final frontier that we're watching all the states around us undertake, but we're not there yet.
Before I had kids, we were on what seemed a trajectory that vouchers, educational choice, was a for sure thing. And I was certain by the time I had kids and it was school time for them that we would have vouchers a la, is it Minneapolis? I'm trying to, that has this great educational choice program. I went out and visited it. And it is a true voucher program. People get a choice between public and private schools, and they all compete. And when I talked to the superintendent there, and he said, "Oh, this has made our schools better." I said, "You mean our private schools?" He said, "Oh, no, the public schools. Our public schools, since he runs them, we've now had to change our curriculum. We go door to door talking to parents about why they should choose our government school." It was really amazing. So I knew for a fact that when I had kids, I'd be able to have real educational choice. My kids are now out of the K through 12 system. They are in their 20s, and that didn't happen. So wide scale, what seemed like a revolution coming that couldn't be stopped really was stopped. Why? And then I want to get into what we do in Colorado. At large, what happened?
I mean, it depends on how you look at it, right? I mean, it was stopped here in Colorado. It's been stopped in a lot of other blue states or purple states, but it hasn't been stopped nationally, right? So the trend line on school choice, especially over the last few years, has been toward massive expansion, not towards restriction. It's just that hasn't been universal. So the quick answer to your question is politics. Any place where you have this sort of deep and I think growing partisan aversion to any type of educational choice that might include schools outside the public system, you start running into roadblocks, right? Either it's impossible to pass a bill, or it's impossible to get it onto the ballot, or something political gets in the way, or if you do get some traction on it, it's going to be so heavily regulated that the private schools can't participate, or that you don't even really want it at the end of it, or it becomes a constitutional or a litigation question about how money moves and what we're allowed to fund and what we're not allowed to fund. But one way or the other, there are 15 different swamps that you can get stuck in trying to do this. They're navigable if you want to navigate them. But if you don't want to navigate them as a system, it's easy to plant your feet and say, we're stuck, there's nothing we can do.
And in Colorado, the opponents of school choice have been really good at pushing us into these swamps. They haven't been able to do it so much on public school choice. Why does the left hate private school choice? You know, the folks who would be most benefited by educational choice are those in the inner city, those who are kids of color, those families who are poorer. And these are the people who need it the most. And yet the people who claim to speak for them do nothing but keep them in failing, terrible government education programs. DPS is a perfect example. Help me understand, maybe you can't answer it, why the people on the left aren't working for their constituents in poorer neighborhoods for choice.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, so what you're talking about is sort of the genesis of private school choice, right? The belief that choice exists if you can pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, rich people can pay for it.
Totally. So they've always had choice, right? Lower income folks can't. They can't pay the tuition. They can't pay the fees. They just can't make it happen. And schools at some point, because they're not receiving government funding, can't let everybody go for free or they won't be able to operate. It's just the way that it works. And I think that there is an interesting divide there, both how that's developed over time and then where we are now. So over time, what happened was school choice, at least private school choice, became seen as the domain of the right, and specifically the religious right, because most private schools are religious. And there are good reasons for that, right? It used to be that the Catholics needed to operate their own schools. They didn't have to face discrimination in the public system. Same for a lot of other religious sects. And so it kind of became wrapped up in this sort of partisan vibe, if you will, about what private schools were. And that led to something interesting, which is that the folks on the left who, in theory, should support this, as you said, they are usually representing more urban districts in a lot of cases. That includes folks who would need financial assistance to go to a private school. And you would think that when you talk about an entitlement program for low-income folks, this would be something that people on the left want. And in fact, when you sit down and talk to them, and I've had hundreds of these conversations, they'll actually say that. They'll say, listen, I agree with this. I see what you're saying and I get it, but I can't because, and then after the because comes the explanation, which is that it is considered anathema to be a Democrat or on the left in any way and support the idea or the concept of vouchers, particularly vouchers to religious schools. And so it's not always...
Why? I mean, I get that. The short answer is expediency. I can't do what I know is right for my constituents because the teachers union will knock me out at the next election.
Right.
All right, I get that.
And it's not expediency, it's survival.
It's political survival, but it still seems like those politicians would be rewarded for doing this. We've seen this in other cities, in other poor areas, where the champions of school choice are rewarded by getting voted back into office.
But only if the infrastructure exists to reward them, right? And that's been the trick. And I think that's been the
political infrastructure.
Correct. That's been the turning point that we've seen. So for a long time, you're right. That should make sense. But you only get rewarded for the things that you do in office if you can translate the things that you do into something that voters actually see, which requires some level of infrastructure and machinery behind it. And what happened there is that for as long as the teachers unions and others in the space who were completely philosophically opposed to school choice owned that infrastructure, and for as long as the folks who were working on school choice, which did include quite a few people that were either in the center or on the left, didn't have the infrastructure to step into those fights fully politically, these people were left marooned, just sort of on an island. They weren't able to go. And I think we saw many, many years of sort of limited scale school choice programs, in part for this reason. It had to be safe. You had to have the right political environment. The runway had to be clear, or else you just turned off the engines and stepped away from the plane slowly. What we've seen over the last 5 years, really since COVID, has been this calcification of political infrastructure on the school choice side. We've gotten much better at it. There's more funding for it. There are more people working on it. Those people are more sophisticated. And we finally moved away from school choice as the right thing to do that you should support because it's the right thing to do, into school choice as a political reality that you can't ignore.
COVID, let's take a quick COVID detour. COVID was perhaps the biggest weapon school choice ever had, because once we parents watched our kids do online education to the government schools, we saw how lousy it was. We heard the teachers propagandizing. My daughter, who was in high school at the time, she got lessons in white guilt and critical race theory in her English class, in her math class, in her yoga class. And
it's cool that she had a yoga class.
Yes, of course. Why? Government education. Why wouldn't you have a yoga class? And I wanted to jump through the computer, and she would stop me, and she'd say, "Stop it! I need to pass this class. You're not jumping on and challenging this teacher. You can't do that." But millions of parents saw that and were like, "Oh my God, we've got to intervene." And you started seeing these micro schools. You started seeing the rise in homeschooling, not just religious right homeschooling, but everybody was like, this is not good for my kids. And so how big was COVID?
I think COVID was huge, in part for the reasons that you said, right? Parents were finally able to see what was going on. But I think also because COVID taught parents that there were other avenues available that they probably just never really thought of because they weren't forced to think of it. So I think what you're hitting on is one of the reasons that school choice has become more mainstream, because it's not just about vouchers in private schools now, right? We have people propping up really successful homeschool programs or homeschool enrichment programs that are able to draw some level of funding from the state to make them viable. You've got micro schools. You have increasingly innovative charter schools. Micro schools are any school that's designed to operate at a small scale, right? So there are micro schools that have like 5 kids in them, and there are others that have 20 or 30 kids in them. They could be Montessori schools, they could be single classroom schools, they could
also be a bunch of homeschool parents go, "Hey, I'm not great at mathematics,
so let's hire a teacher.
But Barbara is, and so let's get the teacher to come in and teach, and we'll all group together."
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
and I mean,
real community.
That was around before COVID, but it wasn't around at scale before COVID. Right. And I think the more that people have learned that that's an option, the more they've taken advantage of it. And that has forced the system to react to it in a whole bunch of different ways, right? So we are funding programs now that look fundamentally different than they did in 2020 before COVID happened. But the more that we do that, the more political pushback you get, right? So you're seeing on the public school side this expansion of choice all the time, but also this increasing reactivity and divide between the traditional public school system, your neighborhood schools that you're zoned to attend, and this sort of extra choice public school system, which still has to abide by the same laws, still lives in the same structure for the most part, draws public funding, but is explicitly designed around the needs of parents, even if those needs don't look anything like what you would get in your local elementary or middle school. And that's been an interesting thing to watch, because it means that we've got no shortage of political fights when it comes to protecting these things, not just expanding them, but keeping them from being whittled back.
Let's talk on the federal level. One of the victories was in the big, beautiful bill, something that was called the ECCA Educational Choice Something Act. I forget what it is.
Now we're supposed to call it the Federal Tax Credit Scholarship Program.
I'll try to get in line.
FSTC.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, good God. So, as I understand it, there are great private scholarship-giving groups. ACE Scholarship here in Denver, Parents Challenge, and people can donate to those organizations, and they help poor kids go to a school of their choice. And Parents Challenge, it can be a public school, it can be a private school, it could be used to get tutors, whatever. The challenge to the parents is to get what they need. Under this program, the FCCTPAF, whatever.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
We, taxpayers, can get up to a $1,700 tax credit. That is free money, basically, by donating to one of these scholarship organizations. if your state opts into it. Governor Polis said, yes, I will opt into this. Now, mind you, if he doesn't, I can still donate my money and get the write-off. I just can't give it to a school in my backyard. I can't give it to a Colorado school. I'll give it to some other school in Utah or Kentucky or some other place that is doing it, which would just drain money out of Colorado and do it. So he's wise to do it. When is this going to happen? When will it happen? And will it actually make a big difference?
I think it could. Yeah. I mean, so this is basically a federal version of the tax credit scholarship programs that we've seen pass in, I don't even know how many states now, more than 24. And it's the same concept at the state level, right? You donate money to a nonprofit scholarship granting organization, you get a state income tax credit or whatever tax credit they offer back for it. And then the scholarship granting organization turns that into scholarships for kids. And that's been working very, very well in a lot of states for decades, if they can pass one, right? So if you can't pass one, then you're stuck unless the federal government steps in and creates something similar. So that's where this concept came from. Now, the $1,700 limit is great. It's lower than you see in most state tax credit programs, but the difference is that it's about scale. It's not about a single person dumping $1 million into it. Now it's about 1 million people dumping $1,700 into it. And if states are able to opt in cleanly, and I'll explain more about that in a second, it could be a game changer, right? Now suddenly you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars on the table every year to send kids to a school of their choice, or using it to supplement public education, because that's part of that program as well. It doesn't just have to be on private schools. That's only part of it. But in order for that to happen, the state has to opt in. So we're kind of in the middle of this. The feds are figuring out rulemaking right now. The governors are thinking through how or if they're going to opt in, and then the program will actually start in 2027. So we're kind of still in that setup phase. But there are lingering questions about what opting in means, right? So there's like the binary yes or no. And Governor Polis has said that he'll opt in. That's great. The next question is, okay, what does that mean in practice, right? Are we going to let opt in and everybody gets access to the resources on a fair and equitable basis, whether they want to go to private school or public school? Or are you going to try to put restrictions in place over which types of schools can participate or which things students can choose? Or similar to what we saw with Universal Preschool Program, are there going to be requirements layered on schools that are incompatible with their faith or their beliefs? And that's the open question. And that's not, nothing has been decided yet on that front, but I think there are a lot of conversations behind about how it will go.
Can Polis put a lot of restrictions on this? I mean, in other words, I have a hard time seeing this legislature say, you're right, go ahead and do what you want. I'm sure they were going to say, well, if you're going to do it, you can only give money to blankety, 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 blank. Is that possible?
Yeah, probably. And I don't know if I could answer it with a full yes, because it's an unanswerable question right now because we don't have the rules yet, right? You've got a statute buried down in the big, beautiful bill. It's short, it's well drafted, but it's loose. It leaves open questions about what kind of leeway states have. The question is how the feds are going to address that, how Treasury is going to address that in the federal rules, and they might seal up some of those holes. If they don't, though, then yeah, I think this does become a conversation about not only does the state opt in, but how does the state opt in? And then it becomes a policy question, which is how do we do this the right way to make sure it's actually going out and helping real kids rather than just becoming another political boondoggle?
Ross Izard is one of the state's leading experts on school choice. I'm somewhat encouraged by what you're telling me. Let's talk about Colorado specific. You said that Colorado actually has a lot of great school choice, not on the private side, but on the public side. Dive into that. Independence Institute was crucial in getting charter schools going. Now 15% of all kids go to charter schools. They're still under attack, aren't they?
Oh yeah, but also growing all the time. And so it's interesting because they are consistently under attack and they're consistently expanding all the time, although we are starting to bump into some barriers there. So Colorado's got one of the healthiest public charter school sectors in the United States. In fact, it's the kind of place where other states come to us to learn how to write their own charter law, how they ought to do it, what good authorization practices look like. They come to Colorado to see that because it really has turned into this sort of ecosystem, which is what was hoped for when the original Charter Schools Act was written. And it's been tremendously successful. The issue is it's been so successful that now the system is concerned about it, right? So there are really only two ways to start a charter school in Colorado. You either have to be authorized by your local school board and your school district, or you have to be authorized by the State Charter School Institute. board, and I sit on that board, full disclosure. And those are the only two pathways. So if you are, and before you can be authorized by the state board, the State Charter School Institute Board, the school district has to decide that that's okay. They have to
What?
They have to release you to go apply for it.
All right, let me see if I got this. For instance, there was a terrific classical academy that was trying to be brought up in Boulder Valley School District. And they said no, even though Golden View Classical Academy is great and the same people were trying to do it up in Boulder. And the Boulder Valley said, no, you can't do that. Are you then able to go to the state chartering authority automatically, or you have to go to the people who just rejected you and say, please, may I go to the people who can reverse this decision? It's like getting fired by somebody and then saying, well, can I please go talk to your boss to see if I can have my job? And they're not going to say yes.
Correct, yeah.
So I got that right.
That's exactly how it works.
That's insane.
Yeah. So that concept is called exclusive chartering authority, and it means that the only people in a school district that get to decide if a charter school exists are the school district folks themselves, the elected school board. Now, there are 178 school districts in Colorado. There are maybe 6 that don't have exclusive chartering authority for various reasons that we don't have to get into, but almost everybody has it. So yeah, you're exactly right. You go to the school district, you say, I have this awesome charter idea. They say, well, we don't want to, because unless they're philosophically, why would they want to, right? It's going to steal enrollment from them. It's going to pull people over.
Because people who believe in diversity and helping minorities come up and say, that idea is not what the mainstream wants, but we believe in inclusion. We believe in diversity. We believe in tolerance. I know this because on the school walls, these things are painted. And the school districts that say, we want tolerance and inclusive, they go, no, not if you're a weird minority, no.
Or even just if it costs us something, right? Like sometimes I don't even think it matters what the charter school is doing. It's the fact that there is another competitive presence in the district, and they view it as competition, not as
choice, not as good, not as something that...
Right, it's an encroachment on what they're doing.
Every school district on their webpage will talk about how they value inclusivity and choice and all this other stuff that they want to meet the needs of diverse populations. It's a lie.
In a lot of cases, yeah. I mean, or at least it's not fully true because they feel bounded by a system that heavily resists any kind of change, right? So yeah, you go and the school district says no, and then you don't get to just go automatically ask CSI to authorize you. You have to go get Charter School Institute. You have to wait for the school district to release you to be able to go and apply. And they can just say no. And they often do say no. Those are political fights in and of themselves. And so what you have is this incredibly diverse, super successful ecosystem of charter schools out there. More people are seeing it. More people are wanting to start it. Those charters are wanting to expand. They're wanting to open new campuses. And the traditional system is, at least in a lot of districts, having this sort of apoplexy about, too much. And they have the ability, structurally and politically, to just shut it down. And until we can address that, the exclusive chartering authority ceiling, we are going to run into a limit on how much public school choice the state can provide. Now, we've got other avenues. We've got magnet schools and we've got innovation schools, but those still live under district school boards. We've got homeschool programs, but those aren't exactly what every single parent is looking for. And so we've got this looming elephant in the room, and I think we're starting to bump into it.
So take Golden View Classical Academy. It was amazing that they were authorized, but for a brief moment there was a pro-choice school board there that allowed a few school districts in. Golden View Classical is a classical school, so they work a lot on classical education. The kids there can actually read and write. It's pretty ridiculous. And they have, 400 kids, but they have more than that on the waiting list. The desire is overwhelming. Kids from Boulder would be driven down every day because their parents go, this is a school I want my kids to go to. The same people say, well, then let's put it up in Boulder. So there are hundreds of parents up in Boulder who are at these meetings saying, if you build this school, our kids will go there, guaranteeing it would be filled on day one. They don't care, and they just denied it. And you're saying there's no recourse for these families.
Yeah, now Golden View eventually got through the process. They're now a CSI school. They're authorized by CSI and not by Jeffco.
In Boulder.
some Golden View's in Golden.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about the one they wanted to do in Boulder got stopped.
Yeah, and if Boulder won't release them, then they're cooked. That's it. There are no other pathways. And so I think,
By the way, I just find that so delicious because I live in Boulder, and Boulder prides itself on its diversity. But hell, we cannot have any diversity in education because that would be a threat?
Yeah.
To what?
Exactly. Well, to hegemony, right? The idea that they own what happens in those geographic boundaries, which, by the way, are themselves largely made up for reasons that are not good. School district boundaries didn't come from a good place. They were drawn a certain way for a certain reason. And they want to own what happens in that little fiefdom. And our state constitution gives them local control, which effectively says that they do get to own that. And then it's backed up by statute that provides things like exclusive chartering authority, where we have set the school districts up as the ultimate arbiters of what should or should not be available to families within the bounds of where they operate. That includes transportation, right? So it's actually not even legal to bus kids across school district lines. Like if I wanted to move a kid from school district A over to my school district B and offered to send a school bus over there to pick him up, can't do that. It's not allowable. You could maybe send a van and say it's a passenger carrier or something like that, but on a systemic level, the entire system is designed to resist anything that looks like kids going elsewhere. And we got to address that if we want to see it keep growing.
You mentioned something that's just interesting to me. So how were school districts cut up? You said that was a whole nother story. Yeah, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. I mean, you'd think they would be done by county. Yeah, every county would have a school district, or half a county would be one school district, the half would other. But no, they overlap in all sorts of bizarre ways.
Yeah, and
is there a quick story to that?
Yeah, I can give you the quick version. I mean, it varies based on where you are in the country. So Colorado is a little bit less in this spot than like a southern state would be, but it's still there. It's the concept of redlining, right? So when people originally drew school district boundaries, they were designed explicitly to exclude people from that school district. So this is why we have this lingering universe of very high wealth school districts with low wealth or low income school districts right next to them. That's not by accident. It was designed to keep kids zoned into different districts based on income, class, and race. And that's where it came from. And that's particularly true on the East Coast and in the South. It's also true to some extent in the West, which largely followed that system. And so that's the baseline. And then it's like sedimentary rocks, right? So you start there, and then you have years of conflict about this community doesn't want to be part of this school district because they don't like such and such. And the school district gets subdivided. And this one gets too big, and then they subdivide that one. Or this one gets too small, so they make it join another one. And the result is you have this insane map. Like if you ever get bored, go pull up a map of school districts in Colorado.
178 of them.
178 of them, and they make no sense. They don't follow county lines. Not really. There are a couple exceptions to that, Jeff Coe and Doug Coe being one. But they don't follow geographic lines. They don't follow zip codes. They don't follow city boundaries. It's like a crazy person put together a jigsaw puzzle, and then we have to figure it out.
I keep going back to this idea that if they were designed to be exclusionary, so you got Cherry Creek schools, they got a lot of money. Then you have DPS over here, maybe not as much money. And you go, well, wait a second. Those kids in DPS should be able to have the choices and the resources of the guys in Cherry Creek. And I know there's a mechanism for funding where they're supposed to get the same amount of funding, but shouldn't they get more choice? If in Cherry Creek they're welcoming of charter schools, and in Denver if they're not, you're saying, no, not only did we screw you with redlining, we're screwing you by saying you cannot go to a charter school either.
Yep, that's exactly right. And then those folks are stuck, right? So now you've got charter schools that have huge wait lists, so they can't get in, right? Unless you put your kid on the list when they're a zygote, you're probably not going to get in there. Then you have no alternative for opening a new charter school. Open enrollment is tough because the new school district can just say, well, we just don't have room for you, or we can't meet your needs, and that gets shut down. And then you don't have access to private school choice. So what do? You either go to your neighborhood school and shut up, or you opt out of the system and become one of the tens of thousands of kids who have disappeared from the public school rosters with no explanation from the state of where they went. You don't have another option. That's it. You comply or you leave.
Or you try to find a way to move into the school district that has some of this governmental choice.
Sure.
And this is why...
If you can afford it.
This is why either rich people can do it Or rich people can buy a little condominium in that district and say, oh no, that's my real home. I rent a place over there. That's where to get their kids in. It's sad. All right, wrap this up. If Colorado were to make a couple of fundamental policy changes, what would you want them to be?
Out of the gate, right now, on the table in front of us, we could opt in without insane restrictions or requirements or anything else to the federal tax credit program, even if we lack the political will as a state to do it ourselves, which we should also do. But if we can't get there, at least opt in cleanly to that program so we can start getting help out to these families. And then somebody somewhere eventually is going to have to deal with the issue of exclusive chartering authority. And I think if you could deal with those two things and say, look, we're going to allow additional charter authorizers, or we're going to say you are automatically released to CSI if you're denied by the school district, or something. We provide another avenue for authorizing charters, and we remove the brakes on private school choice. Well, now you can let 1,000 flowers bloom, and you can sort of see how this thing develops. You've removed the hurdles in a way that allows for growth. Until we do that, we're just going to be bumping up against the edges of the dome and fighting each other on the margins. People
do have some choices already. I know Independence Institute has a pretty fancy website to help parents with that, schoolchoiceforkids.org. What can they find on that? So you can go on there to find information about almost any school that you might want to pick, public, private, anything. It's got maps on there you can use search filters, all the way down to whether or not the thing has a dress code. So it's an awesome resource and a good place to start if you just don't know where to start, which I think is true for a lot of parents who are kind of starting this journey for the first time or who are dissatisfied and don't know where they can go. Beyond that, you've got some information available in school districts about their choice opt-in windows, because there are certain windows that you have to apply in if you want to be opted out of your neighborhood school. And you can always go ask somebody if you really want to. Actually, if you will call a school district and ask them how their choice process works, a lot of times you'll get a straight answer, but they're not going to give it to you just as a matter of course. You're going to have to go and speak to them. This is another disadvantage for poor families. I've talked to many families who go, yeah, I would love to send my kid to someplace else, or I'd love to know about this. I don't have time. For many inner city working families, education's great. Getting my kid out of the house and cared for 6-7 hours a day so that I can go to work and make money and then come home and try to get dinner on the table, that's even more important. And they don't have the time to do the research that a stay-at-home parent might be able to, or somebody who has the luxury of being able to do this. That's why the website schoolchoiceforkids.org is an important step for all those. But it just goes to the same old point. It seems like the educational system, the apparatus, the blob, the whatever it is, really hates poorer families. Am I wrong? Tell me I'm wrong. I think that they hate losing what they think is theirs, and that includes your kids. And yeah, that is wrong. Let's leave it at that. Ross, thank you so much. Thank you. Think freedom. Did you enjoy that conversation? Well, check out one of these. We have the most interesting conversations with Colorado's most fascinating people. Be sure not to miss a single one. Like, subscribe, hit that little bell icon. And if you can't watch, listen. Check out the Devil's Advocate podcast on your favorite listening app. And by all means, think freedom.